He killed 71 women, and nobody noticed. For 20 years, Gary Ridgway drove to work every morning. He paid his taxes. He went to church. He was married 3 times. His neighbors called him quiet, polite, ordinary. But between 1982 and 2001, Gary Ridgway was the most prolific serial killer in American history, hiding in plain sight. This is the psychology of the Green River Killer, and why it took 2 decades to catch him. Gary Leon Ridgway was born on February 18, 1949, in Salt Lake City, Utah. He grew up in a working-class family in Des Moines, Washington, a suburb just south of Seattle. Nothing about his childhood screamed danger. He was quiet. Below average academically, he had an IQ of 82. He struggled to read, struggled in school, felt invisible. But there were signs. As a teenager, Ridgway had a deeply dysfunctional relationship with his mother. She was domineering, controlling, frequently fought with his father. Ridgway later told investigators he had violent fantasies about her from a young age. At age 16, he stabbed a 6-year-old boy in the woods near his home. The boy survived. Ridgway walked away laughing. He told investigators decades later, "I just wanted to see what it felt like to kill." He joined the Navy, got married, worked as a truck painter. To everyone around him, he was just Gary. Nobody knew what Gary was becoming. In 1982, the bodies began appearing along the Green River near the city of Kent, Washington. Young women, most of them sex workers, most of them runaways. Victims that society at the time was slow to notice. Victims that investigators were slow to prioritize. That was not an accident. Ridgway chose them deliberately. His method was coldly efficient. He would pick up women along Pacific Highway South, a stretch of road known for street prostitution near Seattle-Tacoma Airport. He would take them to a secluded location. He would strangle them with his hands or a ligature. Then he would return to the bodies, sometimes days later, sometimes weeks later. He would move them, reposition them, leave personal items nearby to confuse investigators. He called it keeping his crime scenes clean. Over 20 years, police connected dozens of deaths to a single unknown suspect. They called him the Green River Killer. In 1984, Gary Ridgway was actually interviewed by police. He passed a polygraph test and walked away free. The investigation stalled. Bodies kept appearing. The killer kept going to work every morning. By the time DNA technology had advanced enough to link him to the murders, Ridgway had killed at least 49 confirmed victims. The true number, which he himself estimated, was closer to 71. He told investigators he lost count. What makes Gary Ridgway one of the most studied cases in forensic history is not the number of his victims. It is how ordinary he was. Forensic psychologists who evaluated Ridgway after his arrest in 2001 identified several key traits that explain both his behavior and his invisibility. First, compartmentalization. Ridgway had an extraordinary ability to separate his killing from his daily life. He would murder a woman, then drive directly to work. He would attend church on Sundays, genuinely. He did not experience the guilt, the anxiety, the behavioral changes that typically expose serial killers over time. His two worlds never touched. Second, organized, mission-oriented typology. The FBI classifies serial killers on a spectrum from disorganized to organized. Ridgway was methodically organized. He chose vulnerable victims deliberately, not for psychological reasons, but for practical ones. He believed nobody would look hard enough. He was right. Third, below average intelligence, a counterintuitive advantage. With an IQ of 82, Ridgway was not a criminal mastermind, but his simplicity was his protection. He left no elaborate patterns, no signatures, no traceable behavior. He killed. He moved the body. He went home. There was nothing complex to analyze. Fourth, absence of remorse. Functional, not emotional. During his confession, Ridgway described his victims with chilling detachment, not with the theatrical coldness of a Bundy. With the flat, practical tone of someone describing a work task. He told investigators, "I killed so many women I have a hard time keeping them straight." Not a monster performing cruelty. A man who had simply decided that these women did not matter. In 2001, advances in DNA technology finally connected Gary Ridgway to 4 of the Green River murders. He was arrested on November 30th, 2001. He was 52 years old. What followed was one of the most unusual deals in American criminal history. Ridgway agreed to confess to every murder he could remember in exchange for avoiding the death penalty. Prosecutors accepted. The families of the victims accepted, because they needed answers. They needed to find their daughters. Over the next 2 years, Ridgway led investigators to body disposal sites across Washington state. He described each murder in clinical detail. He showed no emotion. On December 18, 2003, Gary Ridgway pleaded guilty to 48 counts of aggravated murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He is currently incarcerated at the Washington State Penitentiary. He is 75 years old, and the families of at least 22 victims still do not know where their loved ones are. Gary Ridgway is proof of something criminologists find deeply uncomfortable. The most dangerous predators are not always the most intelligent, not always the most dramatic. Sometimes they are the most invisible. The system failed 71 women, not because Ridgway was brilliant, but because those women were considered disposable. That is the real lesson of the Green River Killer. If this analysis gave you a deeper understanding of criminal psychology, please like this video and subscribe to Crime Decoded.